However, I have several communities that have recently decided to ban bags, shopping bags. I have another community that wants to ban all bags, okay? They've already banned straws. And how are we going to do education to deal with some of these issues and get these myths dispelled with?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I mean, I'll start the ball rolling, but I know everybody has really significant points of view, and some of our sponsors in the room may want to chime in too. People react to a problem, you see the ocean, the plastics in the oceans, and it's a visceral response. Those are plastics out of place. Nobody who's, in this program you want to see that end. How do you stop it? By getting it back. We know that people can ban materials. We want to get education out there about the life cycle benefits of various packaging types, and not technical mumbo jumbo, but plain language, educational material, so people can make choices that are actually helping them live more sustainable lifestyles, as opposed to doing what they can do because they can. It's really easy to ban a material, but maybe it would be helpful to do an economic and environmental feasibility analysis of that policy and say, is that going to get us where we want to go? Is that what's it going to cost if we ban them? What happens? Well, alternatives may be more expensive for the consumers. There's costs and benefits to every decision. And so I think as part of the reporting that we do as we culminate our results, you're reminding me that we need that educational piece all along the way to say, what are your options to better manage plastics? It always starts with minimizing use, right? If you can use something reusable, that's great. But where you need a single-use kind of application, the most responsible thing, that may pencil out is to get it properly recycled from a cost and an environmental perspective. But anybody else want to chime in on that?
Let me add to that a little bit, Susan. Whether Patrick from SEJ or Michael from Unilever or Steve from Procter & Gamble or any of the other companies that are in a room, we're going to look at things like life cycle analyses. We're going to look at the impact on the environment. And it boils down to really what you said. In every analysis that we've done, when we look at material A versus material B, so far the answer is use the least amount. And that least amount does what? It requires less energy, puts less greenhouse gas out, and less water usage. All those critical environmental indicators are lower when you use less material. If I stopped using plastic wrap on my diapers, the logical alternative would be to use corrugated. I would need more trucks. I would put more greenhouse gas in the environment. So we are doing that work behind the scenes because our consumers tell us one thing: it is your job to give me a sustainable choice. That's what we try to do, but we can't just stop there. We need to do programs like this to say, and we're taking it back and reusing it again. So this is our effort to take the materials back, move away from this linear-based economy, more towards a circular economy, and help provide solutions. It takes education, it takes engagement, and it takes a long time, right? It's the stroke of a pen sometimes for legislation, which is quick. Infrastructure takes a while. So it takes the voice of all of us, the participation of all of us to do the right thing. I don't know, J.P. or any other members, anything to add to that? We can practice this, whether it's Michael here or Patrick here. We truly believe this and live in it. Yes, you have a follow-up.
Yeah, I do, because I hate to say this, but I deal with crazy people every day. I'm sure okay? I mean, all the publicity is full of incorrect data, outright lies about things about environmental issues, and I mean, I deal with this all the time. And it seems like we never get our real message out. I talked to a news reporter just a couple of weeks ago, and I said, who did you interview for this article? And it was like, little kids who came to the township meeting, and the gym teacher was now the environmental specialist, and she fed them all this data, which was so out of line. I mean, the numbers were ridiculous. And I said, there was nobody that with any expertise that you interviewed for this article. And he said, you don't understand. I have to write 2 or 3 articles a day. I don't have time to do research. I just write what people tell me, okay? So I finally got him to interview me. But the problem is that the news media seems to be blurting out all this other stuff, which is combative to the kinds of things. I mean, you're speaking to the choir here. We all agree with you and you know, see the opportunities and stuff like that. But it's very frustrating because I see this as somewhat, it's going to be confusing in my county if, you know, because I've been telling people, no plastic bags, take them to the grocery store, you know. And if I start telling a few municipalities who go to total recycling, you know, maybe we can get them involved in a pilot program. But I'm doing a commercial in 2 weeks, and one of the, on Comcast, and one of our little snippets was about plastic bags. So I was anxious to come here today, because before I produce this commercial, I want to make sure I get it right. And you know, I'm going to have to say, put your plastic bags back to the grocery store for now, you know, because I don't want to confuse anybody. But my point is that what can we do to really get the truth out there? Because the public is not given the truth. They're given these, you know, crazy numbers and incorrect information, and it's so frustrating. And thank you for. I'm a frustrated recycling coordinator, so you just please bear with me, and thank you for your patience.
We're here for you. This is what we want to hear. But just to mention, I mean, on that point, we believe this back to basics, simplifying the recycle time is completely the wrong approach. It takes projects like this, where you explore the entire value chain and do real research to determine whether or not something is viable. And I can tell you that these people have been working very hard for a long time, so that when the time comes where you can consider to put this in your stream, that we will have all the ammunition to help you educate your homeowners to make the transition as seamless as possible.
Well, the other thing is you got to get a media blitz out there. I mean, you really.
We're here for you.
They don't hear it.
You need to have a media blitz out there. I mean, there's got to be, you know, pictures in the paper and things on the news and on radio. I mean, otherwise it's not going to be successful. That's really the
When
key.
we get to
is
that
just
point, that's the type of stuff that we'll
getting all that out there.
have to explore.
Let me contribute one thing for consideration, and that is the definition of recyclability. To me, it includes 3 things: the material and availability to collect it, the ability to process it, and an end market demand. When those 3 things are true, we can call it recyclable. I think if we all declare plastic has value, we need to make sure we put it in a system that's ready to take it and reuse it. Until then, take your plastic bag back to the store. But look at this one set of communities surrounded by J.P. Mascaro that's starting to take us to the next level. But if we agree on the definition of recyclability, that's a great starting point. It doesn't mean it's not recyclable. It means not yet. Not yet, right? Collect it, process it, and sell it. And that sell it is really important, right? It's not build it and they will come. Build it until we sell it.
Move it, then sell.
Right?
You never collect something you can't get rid of.
Well, that's exactly right. Exactly. And even the store take-back programs are challenged to some degree, right? So your question is spot on. How do we not compete, but how do we collaborate such that we recognize we're all in it together and we can all benefit?
And there was a lot of talk about news and messages, so I just want to remind you, we are not live, not flexible packaging in your venue. There's someone in the back.
Yeah,
who'd like to ask
a couple of
questions.
questions in the back.
And while that mic is moving, I'll just add on one point to your question. You know, I think one thing is being diligent, right? So you as head of your program, you've got to be diligent. And I think oftentimes what's forgotten is it's not just educating residents, it's educating press, and that's in a different way, right? And it's educating your elected officials. Totally different ways of educating. And there's no one silver bullet. It's not just like we're gonna educate and then that's sort of it, we figured it out. It's gotta be continuous. So I hear what you're saying, but I mean what you just described of a writer, interviewing people in a park and kids and then putting a story out, you've got to be diligent with that and, building relationships with your local press. So when they do, they don't have any time and they are going to write a story, but they call you, so that's just in educating.
They actually banned the bags based on that article that the town did. Okay. That's how-
I also had a question about education of the public, and I am the recycling coordinator at Media Borough in Delaware County, and we're a Mascaro customer for recycling. And our residents are pretty savvy about environmental issues. We kind of pride ourselves as being a green community. So I don't think we'll have a lot of problem with misinformation, but I want to be really careful about how we roll it out. And it just so happens that previous to hearing about your initiative, we were planning a set of recycling educational brochures that are going to be going out in March. So we obviously don't want to say, ooh, FPB is coming, because then we'll have this problem that you so rightly fear. But I would appreciate any guidance you had as far as how to follow up the brochures we're doing now, and we can sort of mention something in the brochure, say, look for this fall. But we need to kind of have a better sense of the timing of when it will come to Media Borough. And are we in, phase 2 or are we in phase 4 of the rollout?
I believe you guys are in phase 4.
So it's probably going to be next year?
Yes.
Okay. Will you have a better sense of, like exactly when, so we can?
Yeah, we're as we roll out, we will quicker and quicker be able to move on to the next step. As we learn more through the process, we will learn more about how we can proceed to the next phase. So I believe that we will get quicker every time that we move on from a phase. And to answer your first question about having assistance you could get in educating with your brochure rollout, like I mentioned before, we want to educate you each individually. We want to work with you on these issues with the knowledge that this is coming. So right before we leave here, we're going to put up some contact information for you guys to set up your one-on-one, and we implore all of you to do that. We're really looking forward to getting into the nitty-gritty of your specific municipality.
Yeah, we've done one article in our newsletter about what's happening with Mascaro, saying it's going to happen later this year. But we can kind of do updates in our newsletter as we lead up to the rollout in media. So I'll look forward to working with your people.
Again, anything that is sure is on, but it's not working. Testing. Okay.
Speaking to the mic.
Okay. I'm not carrying enough. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. We were speaking on at the end of this presentation, we would like each of you to set up your one-on-one.
Yeah, and one thing, we did prepare this one sheet. Please make sure you take one of these with you when you go, because that has the people's contact information on the back. TJ Stinson is the primary point of contact, but we've also got a member of our research team. If you have, questions of a technical or economic end market nature that you want. But this this gives you what you need to kind of follow up if you have more questions.
Okay, I remember my train of thought. So, what I was going to mention is any press, any news, any articles that are about this, we really would like to approve them first. We don't want to spread the wrong message. We don't want to give misinformation. We don't want to have to go back and change habits. We want to get this right the first time. So, if you're going to mention something in a newsletter, or please send it to us first. Just make sure we got it right, and then we'll get it right back to you so that you can send it out.
I'm also with Media Borough and on the Environmental Advisory Council. I'm just wondering, and I think some of these initiatives are absolutely wonderful, and we do thank you for them. But I do also wonder, how much are you involved, you, your partners involved in really working with manufacturers and packaging people to really make sure that packaging is reduced? And I also plastic. I mean, I disagree with the use of single plastic bags. So, but I do wonder, do you all work together to try to influence how things are packaged and how much packaging and what types?
I'd be happy to take that one. The answer is yes, absolutely. And what you'll find is your larger corporations have declared goals on what we're doing in terms of reduction, in terms of optimization. I'm on stage, so I'll tell you, Procter & Gamble has a goal by 2020 to reduce our overall packaging by 20%. Okay? Today, since our baseline, we've reduced it 14%. At the same time we're reducing our usage, we have a goal to double our use of PCR, post-consumer recycled plastic. So by 2020, we're going to increase from 26,000 tons a year to 52,000 metric tons a year.
What percent is that?
Depending on where we use it, that percentage will range anywhere from 25 to 50%. We have some up to 100. We think the sweet spot in a bottle, as an example, is around 50% PCR usage. Because when you make a bottle, you actually have to use a little bit of extra plastic. You know, if we have a handle, you punch out that handle. That's called regrind. We don't count that as recycle, but we put it in the next bottle. So we don't want to not use the manufactured material for recycled. We want to use them both, and so we need room to do that. That's where that 15% makes sense. We've used 38,000 metric tons of plastic in 2018. So we've been using PCR and P&G for 30 years in bottles. We use very little in film because the quality is not quite there. But back to the question, what do we do collectively? We are in many, as are some of my colleagues in the room, in many, many collaborative efforts pre-competitively, whether it's the Consumer Goods Forum, whether it's the Flexible Film Recycling Group, whether it's working with the Recycling Partnership, whether it's the Association of Plastic Recyclers, the Plastic Industry Association. We've learned how to work together pre-competitively to set these reduction goals. And each one of us, I think it's fair to say this, each one of us follows what's called the waste management hierarchy. And if you look online, just Google waste management hierarchy. The EPA attests to that, the European Commission does, as well as 180 other countries around the world. And it simply shows the impact on the environment against various end-of-life conditions. And at the top is reduction. The least we use of the material, the better it is for the environment. And every company represented has a goal to reduce. So that's our number one. Followed by that are reuse and refill models. So many of us together have brought the milkman back, if you will. We have a program called Loop, as an example, where we're reintroducing reusable, refillable packaging. Okay? That'll work in certain areas. It won't work in others, in undeveloped geographies. We're test marketing that in New York City and in Paris. Below that on the hierarchy, so you have reduce, reuse is recycle. Recycling simply means we want to use the material over and over and over again, and it's programs like this, like we're doing with J.P., to drive recycling of materials that don't exist yet today, such that we can move from that linear to circular model. I'll finish out the hierarchy because I know you like listening to a geek talk. The fourth one below that is energy recovery. When I collect these materials, how can I properly, I'll use the word incinerate, but don't picture black smoke. Picture a very contained system where we have the ability to take the heat from the plastic and put those molecules to use in terms of other energy to feed your electricity systems. But that's only a second use, right? That's why it's pretty low on the pyramid. That's better than landfill though, right? The one thing that's missing from this hierarchy for me is litter. People often ask, when is a landfill a good thing? Well, when it avoids litter, it's a good thing, right? But we, again, all of us aim towards the top, start with reduction. So look at the waste management hierarchy, know that that is a big driver for our companies, and we do indeed work together with many trade associations to compare notes, to challenge each other. And again, before every time we meet, we read antitrust to make sure we follow the law. We don't talk about prices or volumes or things like that. What we do talk about is how can we collectively do better? And that brings us to examples like this.
Good afternoon. I don't want to take a lot of your time. Chris, we are in the first phase, our development in Lower Pottsgrove Township, and we are recycling bins. What type of grants would you be we would be eligible for to go into the toters?
So moving, you're in bins and you'd like to
We are
move
in
to
bins,
carts.
correct.
So we do have an RFP coming out this year. So we could talk maybe offline about where you are in your timeline and how that might fit in with where we are in our process and what works for you.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question about rain and moisture. You mentioned keeping the carts lidded for litter control, but if rainwater gets in, how does that affect on the MRF line and processing of your two-dimensional processing of these materials?
Well, where's my mic on? Okay, yeah. Nobody in the recycle markets ever want any moisture in their bale, and you know that. But as far as on the processing line, it's actually kind of funny because we don't want moisture on it either, but the moisture actually helps it stick to the belt. And with a material that's lightweight and high-speed belts, you have tendency for material to jump around a little bit. And the moisture will actually help it stick to the belt and make it a little bit easier to be recovered. But then, of course, you have the difficulty of now you have moisture in your bale. The other question that I kind of remarked on there is, what about high-speed belts and lightweight material? And again, this is a collaboration of many industries, and one of the industries that's helping with this is the recycling manufacturer to make sure that we overcome those challenges that have been proposed.
This is Matt from Unilever. I just wanted to kind of just echo on what kind of Steve was saying. I mean, I agree. I think there's a lot of frustrations too, but I think that as corporations where we do have different channels, we are kind of being a voice. We have very similar goals, like recyclable 100%. I think one of the things I want to add is that we are actually also working on labeling. So putting the sustainable packaging label information. We are exploring this thing called Smart Label. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but I'm sure you are. But I think that where consumers can scan it tells them how to recycle properly. I think that could also kind of help expedite and kind of make it easier and make it very consumer friendly to know how to recycle. But with that, I think one of the concerns that I have is that it's great. I mean, this is a great initiative where Unilever is 100% supportive. But when it comes to labeling, how do we label it so that, because not all districts will be able to recycle flexibles, unfortunately, even let's say like 2 years. And I think the scalability is huge. I think that's what we need. But I'm just thinking like, by 2022, we are saying that about 100% of our packaging will have sustainability claims on the package. So how do I make it so that some districts that can, I tell them, but some districts that can't, I don't. But then we're rolling our products throughout the entire country. So I think what I'm trying to get at is, I think we need more of this, more of unity and more of singularity messaging, where we're very together on how we communicate. So I know that everyone's doing their own media press, but I think we kind of need one front where we have same language that we're rolling out to everybody. And the last thing I'll say is I think consumers, being on a product development side as well, consumers are intrigued by cool sort of innovative packaging. So one of the things that we really love actually from Procter & Gamble that we found out is the Suave bottles. They actually say on the Suave bottles, I've made from milk cartons. That's very easy for consumers to understand, and they see, wow, this is great, this is sustainable, this is recyclable in action. I think that kind of prompts consumers to be more interested, and then also word of mouth is huge. In Canada, they're so much more far in advance, and that's because there's a lot of people talking, and it's just a lifestyle. So I think it's a slow progress, but I think we're really, at least the big companies, like we are making strides. It is a priority. We have dedicated sustainability teams, so I think we're on the right track, but it's going to be a journey ahead of us.
I think we could take one more question. Ooh, Susan's got to catch a flight. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you all.
Sorry.
Oh, thanks very much. I just want to say before I ask the quick question, I really want to thank TJ for being a great partner for us. He's the only reason why we knew about this event and came here, and then also Maury for hooking us in. So as this market develops for these bales, they're heterogeneous, they've got lots of different components in them, and is there going to be a mechanism to talk about the valuation of those bales with respect to some of those subcomponents as the market's developed, so that you guys can share information and say, you know what, if we could get this piece out, if you could substitute that for this, the bale would be worth this much more? Like, is there a way over time to kind of track it, and all of the consumer product folks, the film folks can kind of work their way through? I mean, everyone faces different stability, product stability, and you got to print on the package. There's marketing considerations, but to Unilever's point, you've got to work together if you want this to work, because we're all in it together. So thanks so much.
Sure. Yeah, I can go first, but I'm sure anybody has a point of view on this.
Well, the idea is to include all the materials. That is our primary goal, but obviously this is a demonstration, it's a pilot, it's a work in progress, so we have to consider all avenues of that nature.
I'll state this out loud, although people in the industry know this. The more homogeneous the material bale is, the higher value it has. As we add in additional materials, the value in that bale goes down, right? I think everybody knows that. One of the things we're doing as an industry is asking a very basic question. Of your multi-material films that you use today, how many could move to a mono layer or mono material polyethylene? So there's a majority that can move up today. And with the innovations coming out of the resin industry and the chemical industry, Sarah, nod your head, right? Because you're deep in the middle of that. There is an opportunity to move from a multi-material to a mono material and help that. There's other materials that we know we want to minimize, right? And anytime you mix a PET with a PE, right, they don't blend very well together. So the solution is to minimize the amount of PET that's in your films, right? Hence move to a polyolefin or polyethylene. You want to minimize things like PVC. I'm not saying it's bad material, I'm just saying it doesn't blend well with others. And so as we move to a more homogeneous mix, we all see better value, right? And the real innovation that's needed in the future, you alluded to, is to find those barrier materials that will enable better blending and not really be viewed as a contaminant within the system.
Okay, everybody, we're going to wrap it up. Again, thank you to our speakers, Steve, Chris, TJ, Susan, who just left. Again, I just want to remind you that we want to talk to you specifically. We want to have an in-depth, one-on-one conversation about your community and your interest in this project. So please feel free to send an email to TJ Stinson at this address, and he will line up your meeting, and we will come out to see you, and we will talk flexible packaging. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and your attention.